De l'insuccès sexuel que tu as connu depuis ton adolescence, là. Cette frustration qui te poursuit depuis l'âge de 13 ans, laisseront en toi une trace ineffaçable. Et à supposer même, bon, que tu puisses dorénavant avoir des femmes. Ça ne suffira pas, pour autant que toute possibilité de revanche te soit interdite.
Inceldom as an ideology was cultivated out of the abstraction of loneliness. They've existed for as long as we've had stratified patriarchal societies. Taking much of the middle strata, we've confused people who feel forgotten in a sea of privileged blandness. The blame is always unjustly placed. What blurs the lines is when you incorporate intersectional thinking into the mix. I'm focusing on men in this video. However, I'm not opposed to exploring cis females or other genders in the future. The majority of incels who commit violence off the internet that are covered in the media are white, but believe me when I say it isn't just limited to light skin. The violence from white incels is definitely a big topic here that I would like to cover though, and it's probably something I'm going to stick around with because I'm among that group, and I just know more about that. Fear and sex are huge and surely are the biggest factors in survival. Back when we lived in open savanna, these drivers motivated us to find shelter and to develop clans to build off of. Now, deeply encoded Western structures help form a chasm that haunts many young men. It started with my journeys into incel forums. I mean, the extremely broadly, of course, because the ideology intertwines with doomerism, no-fat, neatism, white supremacy, anti-feminism, and gaming.
Oh, they're
just gaming.
Sage is so lit.
It's an obsession for me to follow this shit, even though it's clearly bad for my emotional stability and judgment. A bit like someone who follows serial killers for personal research or a personal project. John in Mindhunter had this obsession and went catatonic when Ed Kemper bear hugged him. Incels.me or co or is is a big assembly place for incels I know of. It's toned down a bit on misogynistic rhetoric, and keep in mind that a lot of stuff in this script I'm writing now was written a year ago or so. The forum is toxic and a real cesspool to look at. Most of what I see on this forum is venting. Frustration directed at dating, economic, and cultural expectations. But most importantly, women. Occasionally I'll see a user express otherwise genuinely held contempt toward nothing in particular. Self-isolation from this outgroup builds on their hatred. The lack of knowledge of an unknown presence or force cascades and presents itself as a seething resentment built on fear, or in this case, on rejection. Even more than this is a misguided anxiety over their status. Lots of more privileged people take being an incel a tragic affront to their entire existence.
Chad and Stacy and Chad, winners of the genetic lottery!
When a neoliberalistic society places so much weight on things like social standing and reputation, even the possibility of losing some of that affects you down to the core. Incelism. I don't know if that's a word. Incelism. Is that actually a word? Let me check. Incelism finds itself as a reaction to an exaggerated reality in which success is determined only by looks. Women are objectified, but then on the flip side of the coin are seen as privileged by lonelier men who don't have the financial or mental capacity to exert patriarchal dominance over them. As a result of this thinking, anything supporting feminism and actual concrete change to level out the playing field is seen as a power grab by women. This, to me, is chiefly stemming from the influx of whiteness in the incel community.
The intersection of the kinds of people the alt-right is looking for, straight white cis men who feel emasculated by modern society, primarily, and the kinds of people who are vulnerable to recruitment. The alt-right also has success with men who can't get laid, or recently got divorced, or feel anxious about an influx of non-white people in their community. The These things can make one feel like less than the confident white man they are supposed to be. And it's the closest they will ever come to being minoritized. Regarding the second profile, it's important to know that Gabe is not categorically different from you or me. He's a cishet white dude. His problems are not unique. There may be a higher than average chance Gabe has a history of being abused or comes from a broken home. You don't know if that's true of Gabe, he's never said. But most abuse survivors don't become Nazis.
To quote this particularly woke Twitterer, to quote this particularly woke Twitterer, fascists know their audience. They know how to rile up a crowd, and they know how to appeal to the middle people in society in a stratified neoliberalistic dystopia. This feeds a reactionary echo chamber that builds and builds. There is a strong and palpable sense of anxiety and uneasiness that exists in a world where cash is king. Echo Gecko made a video that covered this pretty well actually, and you'll have to watch it. If you're not white or of a lower economic status, this neoliberalistic anxiety affects you a lot more.
But that doesn't mean it doesn't hurt others a lot more than they care to admit.
You're treated as fodder, a commodity. You need to work your ass off doing something you don't like for the possibility to do something you do like. We can't blame anything specifically because it's a system that just exists. We make it and maintain it. Neoliberalism intelligently avoids detection. It's so baked into our collective spirit and unconsciousness that everything is a result from it. From being late to work, to having money troubles, to not being able to be there to see your grandpa pass away. Part of socioeconomic isolation comes from just plain geographical separation, and it shows. It encourages you to isolate yourself and to find others in groups dangerous and suspicious, because that drive makes sense in a system where cash is king. We can't make sense of ourselves without language or other people, i.e., we are social creatures and look for other individuals. People need recognition because it helps our own consciousness develop alongside other individuals. We are not isolated. If isolated, we stagnate this development.
In YouTuber CCK Philosophy's video, Hegelian Recognition and Incels,
Your identity and self-consciousness always exists with reference to other individuals. Even people who say, I'm not like others, identify themselves in reference to others. Therefore, our freedom comes from the recognition of others by interacting. We universalize freedom and rights. Incels don't socialize and hang in their small groups that feed themselves and are therefore driven to reactionary politics. Minorities are used to having limited rights because of structural discrimination. This is part of women in POC bonding over shared experiences and enacting change to stop oppression. I plan to have more discussion on this in the future, but one thing I can consider now is enacting change that integrates, not isolates. Ha-joon covers this in his book, 23 Things They Don't Tell You About Capitalism. This is a great little book. You can get for free online as a PDF, by the way. We need a society of equality that fosters social cohesion instead of competition. Self-interest is a most powerful trait in most human beings. However, it's not our only drive. It is only emphasized because those who get a head start want more and more to feed their greed and ultimately their power and legacy. That's where a system comes to life, which helps them make money and to keep it. In order to do that, they need to atomize everyone and stamp out any whiff of collectivization. In order to do that, they need to atomize everyone and stamp out any whiff of collectivization. If not, The people working hard to maintain the top 1%'s benefits will topple the system that keeps them there. Incels don't want to admit it. They get very close every now and then. And if you ask me, it's a matter of time before late-stage neoliberalism meets its end because of this collective uprising. It's now dependent on the patience of individuals grinding every day to break their chains. The same people helping each other to meet not only their basic needs that are not given to them, but to incrementally dismantle the complex and daunting system that beats them down every single second. Those are my thoughts. Tell me what you think.